artist to art. Here we go. A photographer's, oh, you can see that now. A photographer's portrait with Bob. Welcome here. Turn on the sunshine inside of ourselves. That's what we're really here to do, to turn on the sunshine and the beauty inside of ourselves. Welcome. Welcome to another moment. Hey.
Hey, Aaron, what's going on?
How you doing?
Good, man. Long time.
Long time no see, right? Oh my God. Thank you so much for joining us here.
Yeah, man, thank you.
Me joining you. I thank you for for us joining each other on this
Yeah,
adventure of life.
thank you as well, man. Thanks for the honor.
Oh my God. So just for everybody who's new tuning in or tuning in later, there's all these like waves and amazing people showing up. So we are here with being present with each other, being alive, asking questions, joining in, talking about art and ourselves and what have you. You're all welcome to ask questions down there in the comments. Be present with us later on. You can comment with questions. And you never know, you might have one right there. So thank you so much. And I'm Aaron Jack, and I'm doing a curation for Showfields in New York City, and Bob is part of it. So thank you, Bob, for coming on this extra awesome moment of life.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. Thank you.
So why don't you tell us, where are you and what are you up to? It's a crazy time. It's 2020.
Yeah, it is a crazy time. It is a dumpster fire of a year. So physically, I'm in the Greenwich Village, New York, and didn't leave. A lot of people left the area. Like I live in a building with 24 apartments in it, and there are only 7 of them that have occupants in it right now. So a lot of people taken off. Now a lot of them are students, but we're not seeing any of them return right now. But it's definitely been an interesting time. In terms of just what I've been doing, consulting work's been a little slow from my regular consulting work, but I've been doing a lot more photojournalism again, which is kind of where my roots are at. I was a photojournalist for about 15 years when I first started my career, and I kind of changed over the years from doing, photojournalism to commercial photography to advertising to eventually creative direction and communication strategy. And now I kind of live in 2 worlds. Like I do communication strategy as a consultant and with companies. And I also do my photography for myself on the side. And, during this time, because of both between COVID and the BLM marches and all the things that have been kind of going on just in the public sphere, I've been doing a lot more photojournalism lately. So it's been like I said, an interesting time.
Wow. Can you tell me a little bit about like what does communication strategy mean? And what does it mean to you?
What I did was pretty specific in terms of helping companies communicate mostly internally and sometimes externally around and collaborate. And so a lot of it has to do with collaboration. It's how to make companies communicate internally and externally more effectively. A lot of that's through technology. Some of it's through strategy. Some of it's through just kind of like mental tools and a mindset and setting a culture. So it's kind of an interesting challenge for from just being somebody who's been a storyteller for most of my life, either as a visual artist or as a writer, and kind of taking that and changing that into something where instead of just getting the message out to one person, instead of it being kind of a one-way communication stream, like from, either my photography or writing or whatever, kind of getting out to a large mass of people, it becomes more about dialogue. It becomes more about how do we collaborate, how do we communicate across and to each other.
Wow. What is something that you feel like people could walk away with and learn about dialogue or they should learn about dialogue?
Always have it is one thing, and that's one of the things you see both in in corporate culture, in personal relationships, in the media nowadays, and just kind of just communication in general is so critical to what we do and who we are. And most failings, whether it's a political failing or whether it's a personal failing or whether it's a corporate failing, company failing, almost always goes back to bad communication.
Wow. So what could people do to have better communication in this world? Whether it's like on a corporate level or like a personal level or just like to make the world a better place or all three of those.
Part of it's just step it up and do it. Know what you're talking about for one thing. Come from a position of authority. Know what you don't know. Know when it's time to bring somebody else into the conversation. Also, again, just do it. Like I kind of have this rule, especially when it comes to how I work with people, or whether in my personal life or in corporate life. In corporate life, I always have this rule where I'll never send an email if I can instant message somebody. I'll never instant message somebody if I can call them. I'll never call them if I can walk up to their desk. Take that communication one level higher than what everybody else is doing, and you get a hell of a lot more done.
Wow. That's incredible. So just take it. So what you can do, just like really push that to like what's more tactile
Yeah,
in that
yeah.
way.
Just always step up your game a little bit, right? They always say that you should dress for the job you want to have. This is kind of the same idea, right? Like communicate in a way that you'll be most effective.
Wow. And so that how could that be an example for, I don't know, because you've been working a lot with like out on the streets and
Mm-hmm.
what's been happening, and how do you feel like that could relate? I mean, later we're going to get to see some of this work,
Sure,
but I'm
sure.
just curious, before we get into some of the work, what are ways that communication could maybe help the world a little bit, or what could people like skills that people could work on?
Sure, sure. Well, as a photographer, like, okay, well, as a photographer, like one of the things, depending on what work you show of mine, I have two approaches to things. One of them is where, like, from a like the street photography documentary type stuff, like I try to be invisible, so there's no communication there whatsoever. So but that's the effect I want. Like, my intention is to capture people kind of in their real natural state, and I don't want to be a part of the equation. So I try to be as invisible as possible. Now, photojournalism is a little bit different. Like a lot of times with photojournalism, you have to be in people's faces. If you're at a march or whether you're at an event or whatever it is, like people know that you're there, especially if you're running a large camera and flash and everything else, like people know that you're present. In that case, it's important to, let people know, why you're there, who you're repping, that you're not there to interfere, that you're there to cover, and sometimes, quite frankly, you end up, as a journalist, you try to be as objective as humanly possible, and you may or may not be completely on board with the people that you're covering, on either side of the equation. Like I'm thinking, specifically because of like all the protests and everything that have been going on lately, and there's a lot of opinions on both sides of the equation. So, whoever you're talking to, whether you're talking to a protester or whether you're talking to a cop, right? Like you've got both parties that you need to be covering, and they need to be able to let you do your job. So my approach to that is always to try to have empathy with both sides of the equation and to show empathy to whoever I'm talking to. And that way I'm able to, if I'm being empathetic towards the cops, or I'm being empathetic towards towards protesters, that, based on whoever I'm talking to in that particular moment, that person's going to connect with me more, and they're going to allow me in, trust me more, and give me more access, And, people can be, if people think that you're working against them, they very well may, block you from, doing the job that you need to do. You try to tell as honest of a story as you can. Of course, being a human being, you're always going to come at it with some perspective. Sometimes that perspective changes during the course of the assignment. Sometimes it stays, and you make little micro adjustments on the way you cover things, because you kind of see how things are unfolding. And especially like with the protests, when you're on the ground for like I was in the middle of the protests for like 10 days straight, and you see a lot of things happen, even within the atmosphere and the attitude of the people that you're working around, and covering. That means you have to make little micro adjustments as you go along. But the whole idea is just to make sure that, is to continue to have that line of communication with everybody, let them know that, you are there to tell the story. And if, they believe that they're on the right side of the story, they'll be happy to let you show that.
Hmm. So it's really about like this empathy, and you have like a communication in a way that allows them to bring let that out of themselves, kind of thing,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah. And it's showing a little bit of emotional intelligence, right? It's just kind of like, being empathetic, listening, a lot of times what you do as a photojournalist, and people that don't do photojournalism don't necessarily know this, like, where do those great shots come from? It comes from listening and watching, and just kind of being there in the present and seeing what's unfolding around you, having a lot of situational awareness, kind of, knowing what's going on the left and the right of you, just kind of always scanning and always just, watching for the opportunities, because the opportunities aren't going to, you're not going to make the opportunities. They're going to unfold in front of you or on the side of you or behind you. And you've got to be present enough to know to go grab it.
Wow. I think that's something that can also be, taken outside of the context of photography, is just like to be an observer, to be empathetic,
Yeah.
to be watching the scene and to be aware of the environment. I
Yeah.
feel like that's, the world could have a little bit more of that right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
I think for me, I'm just like, oh, like what some of these lessons that you've learned as a photographer and as a, communications expert could be applied to many more people outside of just photography. I think
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah.
for
Absolutely.
me, that's intriguing.
Yeah. 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 I mean, they're kind of guiding principles to me anyways, personally. So that just kind of extends into my work, and it's just more in focus in my work.
Let's take a look at your work here.
Sure.
I want to start off with this one here.
Yeah.
I love this piece.
Thank you. Thank you. Um, that one, I was just out doing coverage of COVID, and in this kind of the street series I've been doing recently has been, which I just been kind of calling it life under COVID, because just it started out with I started out that when I first started this series, I went out the day that they did the stay in place order. And it was interesting to see New York City just like devoid of people. I went to some of the major travel hubs, the Oculus, which is a huge transit hub, Grand Central Station, and these places were just empty. They had like a couple of people in them, and it was just fascinating. You go to Times Square and see like 20 people in Times Square when there's usually like 12,000 people in Times Square. It was just amazing on the first day, and the whole city is kind of gone. Well, because we were some of the first to get hit with it, Washington being another one. But because of our population density here, I mean, there's so many people in New York. The population density average in New York is 27,000 people per square feet. It's just a huge number of people, right? And especially in Manhattan. So, we were all kind of just in shock, in the fair amount of fear and just concern about what is this going to bring to us. So that's what you really saw kind of at the beginning of the lockdown. It was just like this, everything was shut down, the streets were empty, people were staying in their houses. When you did see people outside, they were wearing masks. New Yorkers are extremely resilient, and we've been through crisis before, 9/11, the Eastern Seaboard blackout, etc. As a community, as kind of a whole, like we're really good at kind of adapting to the situation, and that was a situation we needed to adapt to. So, everybody locked down almost immediately. Now, as time went on, you started seeing people getting out again, and kind of, the fear is lifting a little bit more, and there were some moments of hope, where when certain things would happen, or like when when the naval ship, the Mercy, came into port. That was kind of a neat day, and there was and life just kind of progressed. Like life just kind of kept going, and as life got to be, as things got to be a little better and a little better and a little better, and as we started to see the curve kind of flatten out and eventually start to go down, people started to go out and be in the community again, be in the city again, start to enjoy life again. There's still a lot of stuff that was closed and locked down, but but people wanted to go out for walks and were exercising outside because the gyms are closed, and just people started being a city again, started being a community again. So, as this went on, like the tone of my photography started to get lighter and lighter, because the beginning it was like kind of, just desolation, right? And then it was kind of like, okay, well, here's some of our fears. And then it was like, well, here's some hope. And then it was, here we are together. And then it started to get a little bit just lighter. And this is kind of this image is an example of kind of like where things were going. It's like, started going out and you started seeing things that were just lighter, more lighthearted. And I kind of wanted to reflect that in the photography. So there's this spot in the meatpacking district where there was just this wall up there. And I saw the wall and I kind of saw the painted figure in the background and the color. And I was just like, okay, this is a good spot. One of the things that I'm doing a little bit differently right now with my street photography is typically I shoot with the equivalent of a 35 millimeter and get really close to my subjects. I'm not invasive. Like I said, they never know that I'm there. Like I try very hard to be invisible to them. But because of the pandemic, I've been shooting with really long glass. So I kind of went from being somebody who shoots with extremely short glass to extremely long glass, just overnight. And I've shot plenty of long glass in journalism and sports and things like that, but I've never used it for street photography. So it was kind of a new experiment for me, and it's worked out really well. I'd love to go back to short lens photography, but for right now, it's serving me well. So for this, like I just waited. If I saw the spot, and one of the techniques that I use for my street work, there's a couple of techniques I use for street work. One is I'll just kind of walk around for a couple hours and see what's out there, and and I'll come upon situations. Other ones, you just kind of, especially when you're shooting night photography, sometimes you just want to plant yourself in a single place where you know what the composition of the scene already is. You know what the light is, where the light's falling from, and then you just wait for the thing to happen in that spot. And a lot of times that can mean a lot of waiting. Like sometimes I'll wait like 30, 40 minutes in a spot just because I found a place where I like the composition, I like where the light's falling, and then I want something interesting to happen in that place, right? And after a while, you kind of get good at, starting to, find those places and anticipate what's going to be a good spot to hang out in. Well, this was during the day, but the same kind of thing. It was just like, okay, here's a great spot. People are, there aren't a ton of people out, but there are some people out. And, there were people walking by it. And I have a couple of other frames. Like there's, a guy just kind of walking, sauntering by and walking by on it. And then I saw this guy down the block walking by, and I'm just, I'm sitting there with this, 400 millimeter lens on my camera, from like across the street. And I'm just like, oh, please, 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 please. And sure enough, he just, went right across my path, right? Knocked off 3 frames and got it. Sometimes the photo gods just smile on you,
Wow. And are you using like a full camera, or like a smaller camera? Like what are we talking here? Because I know like for street photography, a lot of people use smaller cameras, but
yeah. So for my close-up street photography, I use a Fuji X1, the Fuji X100 series, which is absolutely my favorite little like just carry everywhere camera. I'm using the Fuji XT series for most of my street stuff. Well, almost all of my work now. I was a Nikon shooter for 20 plus years, and I have a ton of Nikon kit still sitting in my closet. But at some point, like you get a little bit older and your back starts to dislike carrying a lot of heavy equipment around. So I tried out the Fuji system, and I've been really, really pleased with it. And I probably shoot Fuji, for just like day to day, like 99% of the time. The only time the Nikons come out at this point is if I'm going to be in like the most extreme weather, or I just need something that I know I can pound nails with. But so
I actually do the same.
Yeah.
I'm an X Pro series, and then the Nikon stay unless I have like a big thing that I'm shooting. So
Right.
So
but
same
shooting
here.
I'm shooting even less and less with the Nikons. I shot Fashion Week with Nikon like 3 or 4 years ago, and then I tried shooting with the Fujis, and I've had so much luck with it. I've stuck with them. So yeah, 99% of the time I've got a Fuji in my hand at this point.
Wow, how do you like the T series with that? Because it's an only electronic viewfinder. I don't necessarily have like a lot of talk on here about like technical, but like
Yeah.
I'm just kind of curious personally.
For the longest time, I was a big naysayer about mirrorless for a long time, and specifically because of the viewfinder. The electronic viewfinder, just like they were just slow. They just couldn't keep up with, especially as somebody who's spent his entire life like just knowing to, being able to focus and shoot really quickly. Like I started, my career started back in the film days when there was no autofocus. So, you had to be able to capture sports, football, basketball, baseball, with extremely long lenses and manual focus, right? So like speed has always been a huge factor for me. I remember once in my naive kind of, egotistical youth saying, oh, the day when an autofocus system can focus faster than I can, I'm going to hang out my spurs. And, obviously that came to pass and I didn't. But, yeah, autofocus systems are so blazingly fast nowadays. But then for a long time, like when I first started seeing mirrorless cameras and bridge cameras, or even some of like the original, like the Lumix cameras was one of the earlier ones I looked at. It wasn't really a mirrorless, so to speak, but it was a camera that had the electronic viewfinder on it, and it just like I moved the camera around quickly, and the camera just couldn't keep up. The EVF just couldn't keep up, so it was just like, yeah, I'll never own one of these. And now, fast forward all these years later, EVFs are as fast as, as live now, maybe a little less so in extreme darkness when it's trying, when it's trying to pull a lot of photons in, but you can barely tell at this point. So, I mean, I kind of, I always liked optical viewfinders, but, at this point, like I love the EVF on the T series. I shoot it with it, shoot with it almost every day.
Wow. And then you also have the X100. Does that have an optical viewfinder?
It has both. The X100
okay.
series is a rangefinder style camera. It's not a true rangefinder. The lens doesn't couple with the finder, with the viewfinder, but you're basically looking through a little optical port on the side of the camera, which you can either have as an optical, or you can flip a switch and you can see through it as an EVF. They've also got a third feature, which is pretty cool, where you can look through it as an optical and click, and flip the switch like twice, and it'll have a little bitty EVF in the corner of the optical, so you can see exposure, you can see framing and everything, but still use the full optical. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I like that feature on my X Pro too. So that's been just like wonderful. So that's why I was just wondering about the XT series, because I'm always like, oh, like there's some cool things about the T series. Okay. And you never know, there might be some photographers out there who might also find this interesting.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Hopefully. One of the things I like about the T series and the new 100, the new X100, the V, is that they have those flippy screens on them. And I use that quite a bit in my street photography, especially when I'm closer to people. Because what I do is I look down at the viewfinder from above. Sometimes if it's if it's not apparent, of course I'll shoot from the from the eye level. But I'll use the camera kind of like the old-fashioned, through the top cameras, like like a Hasselblad or like an old Seagull or Yashica mat, where you're looking down at the top of the camera and you can see what you're seeing. So I love that flippy screen in the back, because that gives me that ability to actually use it kind of like that, hold it at chest level, and still kind of, and not be as, and when people see a camera up, they're aware that there's a camera up.
Right.
Much less so when it's at chest level.
When it's down here, and then the flippy screen. Yeah, Photographic D used the X Pro series for Fashion Week as well, and likes the Pro series. So
cool.
I mean, or it's Fuji. You pick what you want. You pick they kind of split. So for everyone else out there who's not like getting geeky on the photography. So I haven't really done this much, but I just like had to ask about the Fuji, because I'm just, it stays on me all the time. I just got a beautiful like wide angle lens, like fisheye kind of thing, and I'm just playing around with it. It's fun.
The things I really like about the Fuji system, and then I'll kind of get off of this, is that they're incredibly light. The lenses are fantastic. One of the things that people don't know about Fuji is that Fujinon has been making lenses for film and television productions for decades and decades and decades. In fact, most of the television you've watched is shot on Fujinon lenses, and a lot of films that you have as well. So they have top-notch glass, and the Fuji X system has great glass. It's incredibly light, but at the end of the day, like, you know, like it's just the camera that I chose to use. You know, the thing that you always see this online, like you're always seeing the perpetual gear debates, you know, online everywhere. And, you know, the reality is that today, every camera that's out there, it doesn't matter what brand it is, whether it's Nikon, Canon, Sony, Fuji, Panasonic, whomever. Like, if you can't take an amazing photo with any brand of camera today, the camera's not the problem. You know,
Right.
every camera that's out there is a supercomputer at this point.
Right. Yeah, but you can do it with your phone. You can do it
Yeah.
with all of
Yeah.
these cameras. Let's see. Photographic D says, I'm not sure about my tweaking, but it seems like the Pro colors are a little better than the enriched than C series. Who knows? But let's move on to the
Yeah.
photographs.
Yeah. Okay.
I
Cool.
just, you know, I to geek out for my my once of the day.
Yeah. No, that's
One
fine.
time
That's
of the
fine.
day. I haven't done that for a long time. So thank you all for hanging out.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thanks for putting up with the geek talk. It's
Yeah. Oh wait, this one cropped a bit. Let's
yeah,
move
this
on.
one's a little hard to see. Okay, I love this shot. This was just a
Perfect.
grab. This is the X100. It was just starting to rain. This is up by Madison Square Garden, and I was meeting some buddies for dinner, and I just love the look on this guy's face. Like, you know, it started to rain. He grabbed his bag, threw it on his head, and it was just, you know, kind of walking by him, just quick raise and snap, you know. And I love the look on his face, and you know, people have, you know, I get a lot of people that say like, oh, he's looks like Alfred Einstein, or you know, looks like or such and such, and it's I just like it. It's just a cute, just a moment in time that I like. You know, Bresson is a huge inspiration for me, and so is Mary Ellen Mark, especially in the area of portraiture. And you know, I would never, you know, in my wildest dreams, like compare my work to and either of theirs. But you know, when I see situations like this, you know, I have a tendency to just go, you know, this is something I could see Bresson shooting, or, you know, see Mary Ellen Mark shooting. So it's kind of one of those things I kind of always catalog in the back of my head. It's like, oh, this is one of those situations, you know. It's one of those decisive
Yeah.
moments.
Right, because I was thinking about, like, as you're talking about the bicycle, and I could see like some Cartier-Bresson in that, like, kind of philosophically, and then this is like a different sort of element here. So I think that's intriguing. Let's check out what's going on here.
This was on a commute to work one day, to when I had this regular day job, and spent a lot of time commuting back and forth on the subways. And it was just, you know, like you just see how often, you know, also how many people like just kind of float by as you know, every morning. And it's you either feel like you're in a cattle car, or you just kind of feel like you're just kind of in this sea of ghosts all the time. You know, sometimes you see the same people, sometimes you see different people. And it's just, but there's always, like, you know, when you're in the transit system, it's just constant motion, you know. And I just liked this girl, like, you know, she was just sitting there, just kind of peaceful, doing her thing, getting ready for the day. But then I just, you know, there's just a flood of people behind her, so I just went down to really slow shutter. I think this is like I think it's a 20th or a 10th of a second, and you know, it was just kind of unobtrusive, and just held my breath and took the shot, you know.
Uh, VONDAV says looks like the Red Baron. I guess in that last one.
Oh yeah, yeah. Interesting. This is kind of I guess you could say a classic / cliche kind of shot, right? You've got, you know, the restaurant guys that are out there smoking. I was actually I was walking around with a buddy of mine, and we were walking through Chinatown, and we were joking about this shot. We were like, oh yeah, I got, you know, it's like this is the perfect place to get that shot, because the guys that, you know, work in Chinatown, there's still a lot of smokers there, and you know, they'll come out and smoke on the stoop or whatever. We were joking about this as I was, you know, walking through Chinatown with them, and then he and I departed, and I walked back through Chinatown that same night, and lo and behold, there it was. So I kind of had to take this just as a kind of a hey, look what happened. But
Wow. I love those moments. You're like talking about it, and then it just like happens.
yeah,
That next moment. How do
and
you find?
No, I was just saying, and the thing I like about these types of shots too, especially one of the things I've gotten fairly good at in night photography is capturing smoke. And it's just like this becomes one of those exercises in, like, kind of in art and composition, in technique, in the technical aspect of it. And these are always challenging shots because, like, they look simple, but all of the different elements that have to go into it that make it happen, and just that, the opportunity when you just take one or two frames, it kind of makes you feel good about the, as from an exercise standpoint.
Hmm.
I love this shot. Same kind of thing. It was just, I was just on the train, and the trains are one of two things, right? It's hurry up and wait a lot of times. Like, there's either a lot of hustle and bustle going on, or you're just waiting forever for the trains. And sometimes, when the subways are running late, you can be sitting there for 15, 20 minutes, just kind of waiting and waiting and waiting for the train to come. So, I was just down in the subways, just, kind of on my daily commute, and just saw the scene, saw the guy just kind of hanging, looked at the composition of it, and, again, just kind of quickly stood still for a minute, took a couple frames, and then just moved on.
Mika Fashion says, Bob, you're so talented. Love your work.
Oh, thank you.
I just had to, share these comments. This is one thing that I love about Instagram Live, is that there can be comments and people can just like say awesome things. And right now, let's see. I don't know how to say your name. Froger?
Oh, Tim Rogers.
Tim Rogers.
Hey,
oh,
Tim.
There you go. He says great
man.
shot in the train. There you go. One thing that that kind of made me curious, in the last one you were talking about how you're just like walking through the streets with a friend. I always find that like an intriguing thing, is like, how do you balance, for you, like, you're walking through the streets with a friend and then balancing shooting?
That's interesting. Well, sometimes, most people that hang out with me at this point know that, I never leave the house without a camera, at least with the X100, right? Because
right.
A lot of people just take their iPhone around with them, and the X100 is just so light, and so it's just such an easy everyday carry that I never leave the house without at least that. Anybody that hangs out with me for any amount of time, just knows that the camera's there with me. And I often use my friends as kind of cover for things I'm shooting. It's kind of like, it's like, hey, do you mind just hanging out for a second? Like, oh yeah, just stand here and we'll be chit-chatting or whatnot. And it gives me an opportunity to, take the camera out, take a couple frames, and then we move on. I owe a great deal of gratitude to all my friends that have put up with my kind of my nonsense throughout the years. So just, hey, can we stop for a second?
I appreciate that you have such friends. I really,
I do too.
That is joy, that your friends bring joy into the world. So
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you to all of Bob's friends.
Yes, thank you, my friends.
Yeah, there you go. And Annie says says I was there with him. She was there with you.
Yeah, Annie and I've been out before.
Oh, cool. Since the surgeries, been carrying around the X70 Ryko
Oh,
G.
nice.
Oh.
I've always wanted to try the Ricoh GR. I hear such great things about it. I've got the X100, so I've never really needed to, but I've always heard it's a great everyday carry.
Because that's like a 28 to 70, and it's like really small, right?
Yeah.
I've heard so much about it. I ended up going with for my backup mini camera. Ended up going with the Lumix.
Okay.
Because it had like that 20, I think it had the 28 to 200 kind of range.
Yep.
And and it had the front little thing to adjust the zoom, but I don't know, that I've heard good things about the Ryko. Anyhow.
Yeah, I have too. One of the things I like to do, especially with street work, with the exception of right now when I'm using really long zooms, when I'm shooting, one of the things I really like about the X100, and it's just that I'm stuck in one focal length. It really changed the way that I shot. I've got I've been doing this for 30 years, right? I've got closets full of gear. I've got every lens you can possibly imagine. And the funny thing is, like, when you have everything that you could ever need, and you have like, and you carry around a bag with everything that they could possibly, you end up missing shots because you're just like, well, how do I want to shoot this? And you're thinking about what your lens choice is, and, you know, what do I want to throw on the camera right now? And, you know, that may afford you a little more flexibility sometimes. But leaving it all behind and just taking the one lens out for shoot, or, you know, just the one camera out with one single fixed lens for street photography, like, it forces me to work around those parameters. I feel like it makes me a lot more creative in the way that I approach subject, or, you know, approach my shooting. And it's obviously a hell of a lot lighter. And you know, I don't really even want a small carry around camera with a zoom on it, because I love just being locked into that one choice.
Oh yeah, there's something really special about. I mean, for like the last few years, for my X Pro, I only had the one 35, so the 35, which I guess converts to a 50
About
regular.
50, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the only lens that I had on there for years, until recently I had like a deal going on, and I got like a 50, and now I have the fisheye. But like, for years I've only had the fast one single fixed on there.
Yeah. And that's another thing that I really like about just having the one fixed lens as well, is that I do a lot of night shooting, or a lot of shooting in like spaces like this, where, like, when you're in the subway, it's dark down there, you know, and you've got to have a little bit of, you know, when you stop and capture and move on, you've got to have a little bit of shutter speed behind you. You know, it's like, I'm a pretty steady hand, but like when you're kind of trying to trip along, like, you need to have at least a 60 to the second shutter if you want to just even stop for a second, shoot and go. One of the things, you know, one other nice thing I like about the X100, it's a leaf shutter, so there's less vibration, and you can capture a little bit quicker, or a little bit steadier. But sorry, I lost my train of thought there. But the fast lens, right? It's like fixed focal lengths. You end up with faster lenses. So, you know, I love having that f2, as opposed to being stuck with a, you know, or if I just decide to take like the XT3 out with a, you know, with a 23 1.4 on it, it's like you've got 1.4 or f2, and, you know, you can capture things at night pretty well. You can capture, you know, low light situations and dim situations without, you know, without having to worry about a slower shutter. You start getting into a zoom lens, you know, you're looking bottom, you're looking at like probably a 4 or a 4.5, and you've lost a stop to 2 stops of light. And for me, that's critical, because I do a lot of night shooting.
Right. I'm there with you.
Yeah. You can only see about half this shot, but but that's okay. I'll describe it. What's happening is on that bus in the background, it's Larry David is he's up in a spotlight there, and there's it's a kind of a cone of light coming up with Larry David's face in it. And then the opposite side is this guy that was just, you know, another guy that worked at a restaurant, I think a waiter, taking a break from the steakhouse in the meatpacking district. And he was just there smoking on a cigar, you know, and blew out this great, I watched him blowing out these great puffs of smoke. And the bus came along, and it was just like, holy shit. Like, again, one of those, you know, the photo god smiled on me moments, you know, click, click, click. And the bus was gone.
So. I love it. We're gonna go through some a little bit quicker, so that we can get to some other series here.
This was just on my commute home. You know, this was actually during the election, during the, you know, I think like during 2015, 2015, 2016, 2016. It would have been early in the year, and it just, you know, it's kind of that classic example of using signage around you in street photography to, you know, to kind of comment on the subject matter. And this guy was just, it's very funny. Like, this guy was just in, you know, very Trump-like attire. He actually did have a red tie on even, and then the MAGA hat. And then just, there was, you know, the gecko just kind of standing behind him with this like, look on his face. I just thought it was pretty cute. This is just a study in texture. You know, I was walking by, this was up in Chelsea, and this woman was just kind of sitting there, just, you know, having her soup. And I just loved all the textures that are going on here. Again, this is X100, but man, like, a great sensor on that camera. Like, I've blown this thing up to 20 by 24, and the clarity and the amount of texture in this print is just sick. So.
Wow.
This was just another grab shot. I would again just and again like this goes like I talk about the luck perspective of it, you know, the photo gods, but a big piece of that is again what I said in the beginning was just, you know, being aware, just kind of like being in the moment. I don't want to say, don't want to get too like Eastern about it, but it's like I just when I'm
No,
not
no, go Eastern, go
okay.
Eastern. Take us all the way.
When I'm out shooting
Take us
street,
east.
like I just get very zen, right? I'm just trying to absorb my atmosphere, and I'm just trying to, you know, have that awareness of what's around me and what's going on, and when you do that, like that's when you start seeing everything, right? When you're not stuck in your head, when you're not, you know, listening. You know, sometimes I'm listening to music, but I'm not usually listening to music with lyrics if I'm running around out doing street photography. Because I want to be aware. Like I don't want to be concentrating on anything else. So I just want to be concentrating on the world and letting it kind of flow into me and just kind of watching what's going around. So this was again one of those situations where I was just walking through and, you know, I saw the guy kind of like he had that look on his face like he was getting on. You know, you can kind of tell that sometimes. Did you start doing that stuff, you know? So I just hung out for a second and just paused in my walk, and then he took that big old yawn and it was like camera up, click, down, gone. Yeah.
I mean, I say go Eastern and Zen because like right here is like my bowl with Sumi ink, like right to the
Nice,
cavity.
nice.
And like right here, like I got new brushes. I'm so excited. My new Sumi ink brushes. I'm
Oh,
just
awesome.
like, yeah, I just had my first solo show with all Sumi ink paintings. So
That's really
it's
cool.
all about Zen and this mixing of like Zen with like where we're at and the music and you know the music of here, Western and Eastern, and like Zen back and forth. So when I say go there, go there.
Yeah.
Take me there.
Okay, cool. This is I love this shot. Uh, a lot of the yeah, one of the challenges of this display is I do a lot of 1/3 framing. I like to frame in one side or the other. But I mean the heroes in the shot of this couple, and, you know, and you always see those shots of like couples kissing and, you know, whatever on posters and whatnot. But every once in a while there's an opportunity where you just see one that just got that extra something to it. And I shoot lots of pictures of couples kissing because it's just like you're always hoping you'll get that one really great moment. And I just always love this one. Like this one just always this just kind of sums up like the quintessential like New York hot summer night to me. You know, there's what you can't see in the frame right now is there's a movie theater marquee behind them. It's kind of dimmed out. But I just love the passion in this shot and just their body, their, you know, their posture and their chemistry, and it's just like it's a lot of passion there. And again, it was just one of these things where I was just kind of, you know, walking by and, you know, there they were. And obviously I could take a couple frames of this because they weren't paying attention to me. This is my Blade Runner shot. I just got caught in the middle of this downpour. I was just coming back from a show on Broadway, and I was on my way to the train, and I didn't have my umbrella with me, unfortunately, because I didn't know it was going to rain. But it came out and it just started dumping on us, and you know, I was as I was coming down a couple of blocks, like we gotten so much rain, and even like the space of like 4 blocks of walking, the streets were just drenched, and I was soaked. And I had the little X100 with me, which I was kind of trying to hide underneath my shirt because I didn't want it to get too wet. But
I
then
always worry about that.
yeah, but then I saw well, you know, then I got to the corner of 42nd Street and saw the people streaming across, and it was just like, oh God, like this is amazing. Just
Got to
love
take it out for that moment.
yeah, love the light. I just love the people coming towards me. You know, capture a little bit of rain. You know, you always, you know, like, you know, and again, just kind of knowing the tech, you know, knowing the craft and knowing some of the technical, it's like, you know, that like, okay, lots of backlight. That means I'm actually going to be able to see some of the rain, you know. I'm not capturing any of the rain really. There's, you know, drops aren't really solid in this because I've still got to shoot at a relatively low shutter because it's, you know, because it's night. It's, you know, and I want to capture a little bit of the light on people's faces. I want to get a little bit of texture. I didn't just want to silhouette everybody. So, yeah, I just like this shot. It was just, again, kind of another grab shot.
Wow, you got to be careful about. I just want to give a shout out. Got to be careful with the X series and the rain.
Yeah, yeah,
I had
they're not that water sealed.
no, I had one go on me and then had to. Luckily, I had the warranty. Get the square
Yeah,
trade warranty.
yeah. I put the X100s through hell, but okay. So this from a different series. This is going on to covering the BLM march. Um,
Mm-hmm.
this was a kind of a combination of you know, a little bit of foresight, like knowing what was going on. Well, I mean, foresight and no foresight. It was kind of, to a certain degree, it was just following the crowd. Like we had started out at Union Square, and then a lot of the crowd marched down to the federal courthouse. And when we were down at the federal courthouse, we picked up about, I think we were out up to a crowd of about 5,000 people at that point. And then at some point, the organizers just go, "Hey, let's go and let's go to Brooklyn." And there's a park. I'm trying to remember. Sorry, not a park, but there's a sports center in Brooklyn. I'm blanking on the name of it right now. But anyways, that's where a lot of people congregated every night for the protests. And so like the total walk that day, like, you know, you always talk about doing your 10,000 steps. Like I think between Union Square and just getting to Brooklyn in that one park, like I think I did 17,000 steps that one day. And so I was following this crowd the whole way, but when they went over the bridge, you know, the sun was just starting to go down. Like the sun was just setting at that point. We're starting to get into golden hour. And I knew the shot that I wanted exactly. You know, this is one of those things where like you're following the crowd, but you can kind of pre-envision all the elements that are coming together. I knew the sun was going down. I knew we were going to be on the Brooklyn Bridge. I wanted to kind of get that iconic, you know, shape of the bridge in the picture. And then I just, you know, made sure I got in front of the crowd, got way up in front of the procession. Which, you know, which is always the place you want to be with your back turned to where the cops may be coming from. But it was just, you know, it was a pretty safe crowd at that point. And the people are really cool. Everybody's really nice. We didn't get to the cops for about another half a mile there. But just running out in front of the crowd and just turned around, you know, shot a bunch of frames off, used flash for this. I don't shoot flash a lot, but for this kind of stuff I do.
You have flash for the X Pro or your X series?
Yeah, for this, I have the Godox D1 for the.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah,
I love the Godox. I'm using a Godox right now.
Yeah, I am too.
Or Godox strip bank. That's what I'm using right now.
Yeah, I've got an SL60, you know,
nice.
in an octabox up there. So,
is this an XL? This is the SL60W right here in a strip bank.
Yeah, we got the same light going on. All right.
Nice.
All right. Anyways, it was just really a matter of like seeing what, you know, like kind of, you know, knowing all the elements that were going to come together in my head and kind of putting the puzzle together and being like, this is basically the shot I want. A lot of times when you're doing photojournalism, you don't have the opportunity to get this, you don't have an opportunity to get the shot that you want because you're just doing coverage. You're just following the action. In this case, I was following the action, but I saw all the elements and I had in my head something along what I wanted in terms of this shot. So again, sun going down, going across the bridge, I'm getting in front of the crowd so I can do this. Then we get to the one place on the bridge, racked off my frames, and it came out a lot more like I wanted it to than I ever thought I was going to get.
Wow. So like that pre-visualization as like a way to then compose the elements, it starts to come together, and then it's kind of like figure out where to go and then be there for that moment, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's easy to do that when you're in the studio or whether you're shooting fashion or whether you're shooting, you know, anything that you're constructing. But, you know, when you're shooting journalism, like you just don't have that luxury. And so when you do have an opportunity to kind of see elements come together and make them all work in your favor, you know, I always say that, you know, journalism, like photojournalism is, you know, it's an exercise in trying to control as much chaos as humanly possible. And, you know, letting the rest of it go to serendipity, right? So if you can control 70% of the chaos and, you know, 30% of it goes to serendipity, that's just how it is, you know? The trick to really good photojournalism is getting to the point where all the technical stuff just becomes muscle memory for you, you know? And I shoot manual a lot just because that's like, I came up shooting film. And I shoot aperture priority sometimes as well. But that still means I need to make, you know, EV adjustments in the camera, you know, for exposure. So I'm still essentially shooting manual in a lot of ways.
Right.
So it's having the technical elements down to the point where they're just kind of muscle memory, where it's just like breathing, you know, knowing to go up a stop or two stops or whatever, you know, changing your shutter on the fly, like all those things just kind of need to be like breathing, you know. And then when you know the equipment that well, when you know the gear that well, and your craft is down that well. Then it gives you the flexibility to create on the fly, and that's what makes a really good photojournalist is just being able to just create on the fly. And because if I'm worrying about technical stuff, I'm not composing. You know, I'm too worried about worrying about the technical crap. So once the technical stuff is all kind of, you know, second nature, that gives me the opportunity to look at composition, look at light, look at all those things in the moment. What's the distracting element in the shot? You know, how do I get that out of the shot? How do I move, right? So that's I think that's like one of the things you see with a lot of really good photojournalists.
Get the technical stuff out of the way.
Yeah, just I mean, it's learn it, right? Learn the craft. Like the technical stuff is it's the part that nobody really wants to learn because it's the least interesting part of it. But when you've mastered it, it's the part that makes your photography really soar, right? So like just, you know, having a mastery of that is just it's critical to being able to create. Yeah. It's the difference between being lucky and being good, to be honest. And you know, when sometimes you're lucky and good, and that's when everything is perfect. Like that's when, you know, and again, this is kind of a shot like that, right? Like part of it's that I'm good. Part of it's that, you know, there is the craft. That's not really egotistical. I didn't mean this to come off like that.
No.
I know, but like
But
part of it is just I know the craft, right? But part of it's also like, you know, and part of it's an analysis. Like it's literally an analysis of what's going around you. And then part of it is just kind of the luck. Like I was lucky that they decided they wanted to walk across the bridge as the sun was setting. You know, that's the luck element. You know, but part of it is that being prepared and looking at what's around you, and you know, not only using luck, but kind of, you know, making that luck in terms of like, okay, what are the elements I have to play with? How do I put this puzzle together in a way that's really compelling and hopefully, you know, thought provoking, and at the same time, you know, makes for a good technical image.
Right. Visual 79, aperture priority, right?
Yeah,
Usually, or manual.
I switch between I go back and forth between manual and aperture priority. I will very rarely shoot. Sometimes I'll shoot shutter priority, but that's only if I'm shooting like sports or something where I have to capture action. Even then, I usually, if I'm shooting at I don't usually shoot. I'll do shutter priority in the sense that I'll fix the shutter, and then I'll fix the f-stop or the aperture, and then I'll let the ISO, you know, go into play. But then I'm almost always using the EV knob on the camera to lighten up the exposure or darken the exposure a little bit as need be. So I'd say like I use, you know, when I'm not shooting manual, I'm using like a single slice of program mode with manual controls over it.
Yeah. No, I understand. I do mostly shutter priority, but
Yep.
that's interesting, like why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Let's see. We've got about 7 minutes left.
Okay.
So I'm gonna jump
blast through a couple pictures.
Yeah, blast through. I'm gonna jump to a couple at the end here. I think we have like because I think we kind of we'll blast through a couple. We'll just kind of do rapid fire and get to some of these last ones here.
Unfortunately, this is a great shot, but you can't see the guy's expression on his face because you're on top of him.
Yeah, I'm always on the
yeah, it's okay.
on top of the best parts here.
I use a lot of the frames, so
right. So for the rest of it, how can they find you if they want to see the rest of the image?
Sure. So I'm on Instagram. I'm actually all the social platforms. I use social primarily just for posting photos. I try to stay away from politics as much as possible. I try to not put a lot of personal stuff out there. I really just want to use social as a vehicle to keep up with what other people are doing and to share photography. So I'm at Bob Cooley, just, you know, the @ symbol BOBCOOLEY on pretty much every platform, on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter.
Cool. So definitely go follow there.
Yeah, I post every day. Like it's like part of the. It's funny you hear people talk about like their 365 project where they shoot once every day for 365. I never called mine a 365 project. I just been shooting every single day, or at least posting every single day for the last, I think, 4.5 years now.
Wow, that's some dedication.
It's really kind of just meditation for me. I mean, that's the street. I started doing street photography because it was just like I shoot commercial stuff, or I'm shooting video, or I'm doing, you know, regular day job stuff. Street photography is really just kind of an outlet for me, just to go out and enjoy the city. And it's very meditative for me. Like I said, like I get very zen when I do it. So I'm just kind of enjoying the sights and the sounds of what's going around me, and, you know, capturing what I see along the way.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And so here we're gonna jump on to this last series. We'll do about 2 minutes and then wrap up.
Okay.
Here. So let's just talk about one or two, you know,
Okay, sure.
truth you've
Yeah,
missed.
this was so I do some philanthropic work. This was down at an orphanage God, why am I blanking on it now? Uh, the Dominican Republic. So sorry, I was going to say Puerto Rico, but that's not the case. Um, so this is an interesting project because I was brought in to do journalistic style photography, documenting the life at this orphanage. And these kids are, they're in a very, very, very poor city. And the organization that I was working with, what they do is they put in computers and classrooms, in these orphanages to help these kids to learn. And it's the images serve a lot of go back just one
Oh
bit.
yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
The images serve a lot of different purposes. Like the main purpose is to help bring awareness and bring money in. But it's like you always see the old pictures on TV of like the kids with their flies in their lips or whatever, and just that kind of photography always was just abhorrent to me. Like what we want to do is we want to show people that what these people are providing for the orphanages is actually helping, right? It's like obviously they live in impoverished situations, but because they are because they've got these computers, they've got these classrooms, their lives are better, and that's what we want to show. It's kind of that both that poverty and the success that they're bringing.
Wow, that's so cool. And then this last little bit, is this part of that, or we've got
No. So this whole series here are just street portraits from all over the country, just different characters. That first one was a teacher. This guy's kind of actually a tarot reader. Um, this guy's on the Brooklyn boardwalk down at Coney Island. He was selling cotton candy illegally. It was really funny because like he would scurry off when the cops would come around. They go hide underneath the pier, and then you'd hear a signal out there, and these guys would come back out, and they're selling cotton candy on the boardwalk again.
Wow. How do they fit that whole thing and like underneath a pier?
Well, there's some pretty big spaces under the pier.
Okay. Like that just intrigues me how there's just like that looks huge and then
Yeah, it was pretty big.
wow.
This is down in Haiti. This was a security guard. I just loved the features on his face and that crappy old shotgun that he's got, and just asked him if I could shoot a portrait of him, in my very, very bad Spanish, and he was like, okay, and it's funny because almost the entire time I was talking to this guy, he's smiling, and laughing, and the moment he got in front of the camera, he went all tough.
Oh my.
This is great.
Wow. Yeah, so
Right.
yeah, we'll wrap up now, and
Yeah.
for everybody who's watching, before this ends, I just want you to go up here, and whoever you're not following, go follow either Bob or myself
Both.
now. Go there, come back, and we'll be here hopefully. So, and you can watch this later on my Instagram TV, IGTV on my photography account. Normally every week I have another artist or someone cool that I'll bring on onto my Aaron Jack line art. I'm Aaron Jack. And then I'll be on Freedom Tapestry Project on Thursday with an awesome filmmaker. Thursday, Friday, I'll be back here with more amazing photographers all going live. So go follow, and I'll be back here showing, being here, conversing, listening with all of you. So thank you so much. Do you have any last words that you'd like to inspire people with, Bob?
Oh God, inspirational quotes.
I know. No, you don't have to be
Right.
a quote. We've got a minute. We've got a little less than a minute. So
Okay. No, just thank you. I mean, like I said, like kind of the one theme is just as a photographer, as a person, just as a human being, just be present, be aware, be empathetic, and good things will come.
thank you. And thank you, Bob, for being a part of this curation at Showfields that I'm putting together with all of these amazing photographers. I'm just blown away and learning so much. And hopefully being able to share that inner wisdom with the world, and just being a vehicle for you to share your inner wisdom. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Thank you, Aaron. Thanks so much. Really, really appreciate the time.
All right. See you later, and thank you to everybody watching this. The inner wisdom couldn't be without you. Thank you.
Thanks all. Cheers.